Starting to look pretty different in here, guys. We haven't taken down all the wall art yet, but we have filled a lot of boxes. We're actually going to detour and not go straight for the front garden. We're gonna go to the back. We are coming down to crunch time on the move. Oh, look at this. This is the Drop Dead Red sunflower mix from Botanical Interests, and it is so beautiful. Such a lovely thing. All the sunflowers blooming right now are just gorgeous. So all these multi-headed ones, these are probably around 10 to 11 feet tall, and they've got lots of blooms, and all of these are volunteers. I didn't even plant those. Isn't that sweet? All right, let's pop in the high tunnel. Just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on in here. Oh, nice. Okay, so I goofed out here. I've been saying that these were the Monica cucumbers. These are the Monica cucumbers. These are salt and pepper, which is the smaller version of the silver slicer. Look. Hey, little darling tomato. Well, that just makes my heart glad. So the high tunnel tomatoes, I want to give you guys an update on these. This is the first ripe one. This is the Santium variety. And there's some Oregon Spring in here as well. Now, I planted primarily determinate tomatoes out here in this high tunnel. And my intention in doing that was to make it a lower maintenance thing in the high tunnel, because determinate tomatoes, they don't grow as high as indeterminate tomatoes, and you typically don't prune determinate. And basically this last week we have been working really hard to pack our house, to go through stuff, to organize everything on this farm, figure out what we're taking. Noah has been working on his house next door to get that ready to sell, and it has been crazy. It has been honestly a lot crazier than I anticipated. So I called Jill this week and I told her she has put her garden in, has had some issues and some different things. Oh, there's another blushing tomato. And I called her and said, hey, listen, I'm gonna be handing this garden over to you in a few weeks anyway. And right now it needs a good deal of maintenance. And I was like, I've planted a bunch of tomatoes out there, but they're starting to have some sickness and they need some help because the weather's been so weird. We had this really cool start to the year, really cool spring. I think these tomatoes need some airflow. I think they need some help. And I basically called Jill and said, listen, it's yours. These are your tomatoes. This is your greenhouse. You come do as you see fit. You can market these, you can sell them. As long as I can walk outside and harvest food to eat fresh between now and when I leave, I'm happy. And she came over and spent hours out here, and basically what happened is there was like a bacteria in the soil and it was causing something. It's called pith necrosis. And basically the stems of these plants were starting to hollow out. They're not terribly unhealthy. It was just really beginning, and if you read about what causes that, it's a bacteria in the soil, but the sickness is really caused by conditions. Specifically cool nights, high humidity. Getting them pruned out like this and it warming up should help tremendously. They actually look really healthy after Jill came over here and worked on them. Now they're starting to ripen a little bit. Like I said, I'll be eating some of these fresh, but for the most part, this is Jill's. In fact, she sent me some photos of these trusses on 1 or 2 main leaders with all these tomatoes and said, look at your tomatoes. And I said, girl, those are your tomatoes. Whichever ones of you suggested this salt and pepper cucumber, yes, thank you. This is so good. So I love this silver slicer, and I raved about the silver slicer last year and had several people message me and say, hey, if you like the silver slicer, you got to try the salt and pepper, which is like the pickling version, so just the smaller version of the silver slicer. This cucumber is so good. I've yet to find another cucumber I love as much as the Silver Slicer, and now this, it's the same. It's just not gonna get as big. But with this heat we've been having, several of my other cucumbers are starting to get real bitter. And this is still so sweet and juicy and good, and the skin is thin, even though this is a larger one. Man, this is a good cucumber. So when it comes to pruning, here's the deal, guys, in the garden. The conditions, the pith necrosis, the cool nights, the humidity, there are all these factors that went into it. And whereas in normal cases, you wouldn't prune determinants because you know, you cut off branches and you're costing yourself fruit. By pruning them, this fruit will get bigger, okay? There's always this trade-off. Any plant, whenever you allow it to set multiple fruits and put energy into that, you're gonna get smaller fruits. That's why, like, when people grow like those massive pumpkins, you ever seen those massive pumpkins where they put them on like a pallet and they move them in with a forklift to be judged? When people grow those, they grow a massive variety, but they take all the other blossoms and fruits off of the plant, and they only allow that plant to ripen one, because the fewer fruits you have, the larger they get. Now, Jill already found somebody to buy these tomatoes. I gave Jill free rein over this, and she decided that, one, because of the sickness, it would be better to go ahead and prune them down. Two, because she had someone to buy them and she knew what they were going to use them for. It's a local restaurant and they're going to use them on like sandwiches and stuff. They would probably appreciate larger fruit. So by pruning them down, not only did it probably save the plants because of that necrosis, they look great now. She's also going to get bigger fruit. You have to be careful not to let any rules really become super black and white in the garden, because there are going to be situations and circumstances that arise that you do things differently, and that's okay. And here is the Splash of Cream tomato, still bringing me joy. Still having new variegated leaves. Growing this under shade cloth is definitely a happy thing to do. However, I do wonder if the 50% shade cloth, given the cool nights and the humidity, if that might not have attributed to the necrosis, maybe on a mild level. When we first found it, me and Jill both, you should have seen, we're like, what is this? We have no idea. Never dealt with that before. But man, you learn something all the time whenever you stay seated as a student. This has definitely been the kind of year for me to really practice what I preach, because I talk to you guys all the time about having, you know, like grace for the process and living in the grace of mostly. And mostly, I keep a good garden. Mostly, I maintain all of this stuff. Mostly, I grow a lot of food. But this year, we're moving across the country. At this point, we are moving across the country in like a month. Less than a month, actually. Our stuff is leaving here like 28 days or something like that. That's crunch time. My dad's going through cancer treatments. We're doing so much. And I see that as an opportunity for me, and Jill and I were talking about this. It's okay to model the grace of mostly. Sometimes you're gonna have seasons in your life where you're not getting to garden to the capacity that you might hope. And the best thing to do is just make your peace with it and do the best you can. And remember that your goal is not just to grow a garden, but be a gardener. And though parts of my garden are suffering from disease right now, I'm still a gardener. Y'all, these cherry tomatoes are so good. Beautiful roses. There's just too much loveliness and richness and wonderful beauty and life out here to be focusing on what's not perfect. Hey, check that guy out. That has a little spot on it, but it looks pretty good overall. That is a large barred boar. Look at the pretty markings on that. Isn't that so pretty? It's almost metallic looking. And this little guy is called Hill Marmande. It's not very large, but seems like it would be nice. Oh, sad. It looks like some critter. Well, that might not have been a critter. It was cucamelons, guys. They grew up the sunflower and pulled it over and are literally, they're tying the sunflower to this trellis. That is wild. Isn't that crazy? Looks like they're battling it out over here with the zinnias too. Oh, do I have any squashes ready? Got a few that are very close, not quite ready yet. Oh look, several of my Queen of Monaco tomatillos are ripe. Benjamin is gonna be super excited about this. I need to find something to make with these. Y'all give me your best tomatillo recipes. I've actually never successfully grown tomatillos. I've always had issues with them and pests. And even several of the ones that I've gotten this year have, had worms in them. Jeremiah bit into one, almost ate a worm. But there are quite a few on here right now that have just ripened over the last, that have just ripened over the last day. This is what happens whenever I don't bring a basket. Oh my goodness, guys, help me. Look at this guy. I've said this a few times recently to people. This is the most uncomfortable season I've ever lived through voluntarily. You know, this move, and I'm so excited for it. And the thing that I don't want to do is wish away the last 28 days that I have in the home and farm that has been the focus of our love and has homed us for the last 7.5 years. But it's so uncomfortable to be in transition, and it's one of those things where I just keep finding myself being like, oh, I'm so ready to be home. I'm ready to go home, and I'm ready to be settled, and I'm ready to not be doing so much back and forth and so much being apart and busyness and not being able to fully focus on our kids because we're just doing a lot, you know, like having to do a lot of errands and do a lot of appointments. And we're really trying to be very intentional to still be having quality family time because I don't want my kids to look back on this season and hate it. And so I'm just making a very conscious effort to not wish it away. And I've spent a lot of time just sitting right here in this exact spot, in this chair, just sitting back and watching the sun come up and go down on this garden, and just staying in a place of gratitude and praise and thanksgiving. I've been blessing Jill to come in and take hold of this, handing it over to her. If you want to see my favorite spot in the garden this year, right here. Every year I end up with a favorite little spot from which where I stand is just the most beautiful view. And this year, this is it for me. And just the way this color bloomed, just the way this looks. Today, I took Malia shopping to find an outfit for her Sweet 16. As we were backing out of the driveway here, it hit me that my favorite spot in the garden, and every year I have a favorite spot. I take 100 photos of it. I love it. It moves my heart differently than any other little view of the garden. And it hit me today that my favorite spot was the view from pulling out of the driveway. And I just thought that was really sweet. I kind of had in my mind that our last weeks here would unfold differently than I think that they actually will. You know, whenever I was 6 months out from this move looking at it, I thought of all of the beautiful content that I would make, and the tribute videos that I would edit, and all the different things that I would do. And as it turns out, this season feels a lot like survival mode. It's hard. And I understand for a lot of people who are used to the comfort of our channel and the refuge that we've really tried to create here. And that's what I've always wanted to do here. I've always wanted to make a seat at my table and to live in a glass house and to invite you in to my life. And I feel like we've pretty effectively done that. And I know that this season might be difficult because change is hard. And I actually have a great deal of compassion for those of you who have told me, like, I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with the changes. I am gonna miss this. I can't believe you would leave this. I can't believe you would do things differently. And guys, I understand what it's like to find something that gives you comfort because it's constant and then have a hard time when it changes. Now I'm gonna tell you this. When we move all our stuff to South Carolina and we move our farm, it feels like labor. This is the hardest transition. I am uncomfortable and I will break down and cry myself silly whenever I get there, and I will process the grief that is necessary when seasons change. But I'm not going to come to a place of regret. And this is what faith moves are. This is what praying about it and deciding to take leaps, this is what it looks like. And it looks like stopping and going, whoa, my favorite view from my garden this year will be the last thing I see when I pull out of the driveway. And it's noticing those things and being like, hey, these little things matter. Change is hard. And while I 100% feel you, that change is difficult. Sometimes you just gotta look at the little stuff. And you have to move forward with your pockets full of harvest and your heart full of dreams, knowing that if you never pushed, you would never get to hold that new thing. If you never went through the discomfort, if you never said, you know what, this dream is worth the sacrifice, this dream is worth the discomfort, you never get to the other side. And I just want to thank those of you who are walking with us as cheerleaders and who are speaking identity over us and who are saying, hey, I trust your vision and I'm here for you, I'm cheering you on. I've read comments over the last few days that have just filled my heart with so much joy of people being like, baby, look where you are. Because I've been watching from the beginning, and look where you are, and you're authentic and you're good and you're true, and I believe in you. And I want to thank those of you who have spoken that over us the last few days. Thank you for walking through us, through the change, and looking at the beautiful view from pulling out of the driveway. I am fully convinced that the best is yet to come. Thank you guys for hanging out with me in my garden this evening. I bless you. Until next time.